Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I bring you chilling echoes from the shadowed heart of the wilderness, the three true tales that twist nature's silence into screams. First, a hiker vanished in Oregon's forests, his camp untouched, his radio static filled. Rescuers heard footsteps in the fog, but no one was ever found. Second, two campers in the Rockies awoke to find deep claw marks circling their tent. No animal matched the prints, a half beast, half something else. Lastly, a ranger in Alaska answered a distress call. All he found was an empty cabin and the word "run" scratched deep into the wood. These aren't legends, they're facts whispered by the trees. Would you dare to go that deep in the vast, uncharted corners of our world, where pine needles blanket the earth and sunlight filters through towering trees and quiet shafts? Nature holds secrets far older than civilization. Among these ancient woods, where the only sounds are wind and wildlife, something else occasionally stirs, something not bound by human understanding. There are places in the wilderness that seem to breathe with mystery, exhaling shadows and stories of the unexplained. The deeper you go, the more the line between reality and nightmare begins to blur. Consider the remote forests of Oregon, dense and labyrinthine. One particular case tells of an experienced hiker who ventured into the wild for a solo weekend trip. He was well equipped and had mapped out his route with precision, leaving details with family and friends. But after a few days of radio silence, a search party was dispatched. What they found was more confusing than frightening. At first, his campsite appeared perfectly intact. His tent stood unzipped, his fire pit cold but not scattered, his backpack full of supplies, and his radio softly crackling with static on a loop. No signs of struggle, no animal tracks, no blood, just silence. And then came the reports from the searchers. Some claimed to hear heavy footfalls just beyond their line of sight, always moving but never seen. Radios began to malfunction one by one, and dogs refused to go further beyond a certain tree line. The man was never found. Some claimed he had simply gotten lost, but others, including seasoned trackers, were unsettled by how clean the disappearance had been, like he had been lifted out of existence without a trace. Then there's the story of two campers who decided to pitch their tent deep in the Rocky Mountains. They were experienced outdoorsmen, familiar with the behavior of bears, wolves, and other large predators. The first night passed uneventfully, but the second night would forever alter their understanding of the natural world. They awoke to the sound of slow dragging around their tent as something scraping across the ground in wide, deliberate circles. At first, they assumed it might be a curious bear or moose, but the noise was unlike any animal they had encountered. As dawn broke and the sound ceased, they stepped outside and were met with a scene that made their blood run cold. Deep, narrow claw marks encircled their tent in a perfect ring. The marks were too deep for any known animal, and the stride between them was inconsistent, sometimes bipedal, sometimes quadrupedal. They photographed the scene and left immediately, hiking all day to get back to safety. Experts later examined the photos but couldn't identify the creature. The marks didn't match bear, cougar, or even large wolves. The patterns suggested intelligence, even intention. Whatever it wasn't just passing by. It had been watching, studying, maybe even waiting. Further north, in the icy wilderness of Alaska, a park ranger responded to a distress signal sent from a remote ranger outpost accessible only by snowmobile or helicopter. The call had come in faint and distorted, but the word help was unmistakable. When the responding team arrived at the cabin, what they found was unsettling. The building stood eerily still under a sky thick with snow clouds. The door was ajar, swinging slightly in the wind. Inside, there was no one, no blood, no signs of a break-in, no struggle. Everything was in place, boots neatly by the door, food on the table, a half-finished journal entry. But across the back wall, carved with frantic pressure, was a single word gouged deep into the wood: "Run." That was it. The team swept the area, even brought in helicopters to scan the forest canopy and surrounding land for miles. Nothing. The ranger assigned to that outpost was never seen again, and his body was never recovered. Investigators theorized a psychological break or environmental disorientation, but none could explain how he managed to vanish so thoroughly, or why someone, possibly himself, who had carved that single, primal warning into solid pine. Across all of these tales, A thread runs unbroken, people vanish without logical explanation. And those who return often carry trauma and confusion that can't be squared with what little evidence is found. In many cases, modern tracking technology, satellite imaging, and search parties with dogs yield absolutely nothing, just silence, static, or traces that deepen the mystery rather than resolve it. Sometimes, witnesses speak of a sudden shift in atmosphere, as though the forest itself changes character, more oppressive. Watching, there are reports of lost time, distant whispers, strange lights flitting between the trees. These aren't isolated to North America either. Similar disappearances have occurred in the Black Forest in Germany, the Aokigahara Forest in Japan, and the ancient taiga of Siberia. Skeptics are quick to offer rational explanations: exposure, accidents, predators, hypothermia-induced delirium. But these explanations often fall short when examined closely. Why are belongings untouched? Why is there no blood, no drag marks, no indication of panic or resistance? Why do even trained dogs and experienced trackers sometimes refuse to proceed, visibly disturbed, tails down and ears back? Why do electronic devices malfunction in areas with no logical reason for interference? Why do people who survive speak in hushed tones about unnatural sounds and feelings of being watched by something not quite human, not quite animal? Some folklorists point to ancient legends of wendigos, skinwalkers, forest spirits that lure travelers into the woods, never to return. Indigenous stories passed down through generations often warn of places where the land itself is alive and vengeful, where crossing a certain boundary is akin to entering another realm entirely. Though often dismissed as superstition, these stories hold eerie parallels to modern accounts. The consistency across cultures, time periods, and locations suggests a phenomenon older than our tools and more complex than we understand. There are even theories from fringe scientists and researchers proposing geomagnetic anomalies, interdimensional rifts, or hidden cave systems beneath certain wilderness areas that might explain the vanishing of people. While these ideas stretch the boundaries of accepted science, they at least attempt to confront the core truth that something is happening out there, something we can't yet explain. For many who hear these stories, there's a temptation to shrug them off as coincidence or exaggeration. But for those who have spent time in deep, untamed wilderness, there's an understanding and instinctual respect, even fear, for the unknown forces that dwell beyond the reach of roads and cell phone signals. The woods can be beautiful, peaceful, even spiritual, but they can also be indifferent, ancient, and deeply, deeply strange. In the hidden recesses of the world, where the last remnants of untouched wilderness still breathe, nature stretches vast and indifferent. These deep woods, with their towering trees, dense underbrush, and endless canopy, hold within them a silence so profound it feels alive. It is in this silence that horror often finds its voice, not in screams or chaos, but in absence, in the heavy stillness that lingers like a held breath. Nature, with all its grandeur and beauty, becomes the stage on which unseen terrors play out, quietly bearing witness to what unfolds in its shadows. Forests have always had a dual nature. By day, they pulse with life via chirping birds, rustling leaves, the sun filtering in soft gold through branches. But when the sun dips behind the horizon and shadows swell, those same woods feel transformed. The silence thickens, sounds become sharper, more uncertain, and the darkness presses in with a kind of intent. It is in these moments that the deep wilderness no longer feels like just a setting. It becomes a character in the story, a character that watches, that remembers, and that hides things it never intends to give back. Many who have spent time alone in the deep woods describe the same sensation: a shift, a moment when everything seems to pause. The air grows colder without cause. The forest goes quiet in a way that feels unnatural. Birds stop singing, insects cease buzzing, and all at once the weight of isolation becomes tangible. It's more than just solitude, it's the feeling of being observed by something ancient and unseen. What makes this sensation more unsettling is the lack of explanation. There's no figure in the dark, no roar of an animal, just a vast, overwhelming silence, like the trees themselves are holding something back. The horror of the wilderness often lies in its ambiguity. Unlike the well-lit corners of urban fear where danger wears a face, holds a weapon, and leaves a trace of the terror of the wild is quiet, creeping, and deeply rooted in the unknown. People vanish in the woods every year. Some are found, others never return, and in many cases, the landscape offers no answers. It gives no clues, no cries for help, no echoes of the past. It simply absorbs what happens and moves on, as if nothing ever took place. Tracks appear and then abruptly vanish. Voices are heard where no one should be. Shapes move between the trees, only to dissolve when approached. Hikers have stumbled upon abandoned campsites with food still warm, fires still smoldering, and no sign of those who lit them. Deep claw marks gouge trees at heights too tall for any known predator. Symbols carved into bark appear in patterns no one recognizes. These signs, strange and silent, hint at something operating beyond the boundaries of natural law. And yet, the forest remains still, unmoved, bearing no judgment, only silence. Witnesses often speak of feelings rather than facts, a sense of dread, of being unwelcome, of walking where they shouldn't be. They describe moments where the forest felt like it was breathing, not with wind or life, but with something sentient. The trees seem to close in, paths twist subtly to lead them off course, and time loses meaning. Hours stretch unnaturally, or pass in the blink of an eye. Technology fails, the compasses spin, GPS signals vanish, batteries drain rapidly, even animals behave strangely. Birds fly in chaotic patterns, deer freeze with wide eyes, and sometimes, everything simply disappears into unnatural stillness. The isolation amplifies everything. With no streetlights, no hum of cars, no human-made sounds, the wilderness can feel like another world entirely. And in that world, people begin to lose their sense of control, of safety. The deeper one goes, the more the forest strips away those layers of civilization until only raw instinct remains. This environment is not inherently evil, but it is merciless. It offers no comfort, no clarity. It watches, it listens, and it remembers. There have been stories of people who return from long trips into the wilderness with no memory of what happened. They speak in vague terms about losing time or waking up in the wrong place. Some refuse to talk about what they saw. Others become obsessed, scouring maps and satellite images, trying to find a spot they swear was there but is no longer visible. They recall hearing strange tones in the distant sea, low, droning sounds that vibrated through the trees and bones alike, lights in the sky or in the fog, floating just beyond reach. Sometimes these are dismissed as tricks of isolation or stress, but when different people in different forests describe the same sensations, that dismissal begins to feel like denial. And yet, the forest never confirms or denies these events. Nature remains a silent observer, a massive, living presence that neither comforts nor condemns. It cradles its mysteries in silence, letting time and weather erase all trace. There is no panic, no reaction, just a calm continuation of growth and decay, as if horror is just another function of the ecosystem, absorbed without distinction. In many cultures, the forest is more than just terrain, it is sacred, alive, inhabited by spirits or forces that dwell outside the realm of man. From the Slavic Leshy to the Celtic Green Man, from Japanese yokai to Native American spirit guardians, these beliefs all acknowledge a truth we often ignore, that the woods are not empty, that what we cannot see still exists, and that silence is not the same as peace. When horror unfolds in the city, sirens wail and lights blaze, but in this forest, horror is patient. It unfolds over hours, sometimes days. It whispers through trees and watches through leaves. And when it's done, the forest returns to its stillness, erasing footprints, swallowing sound, closing around whatever is left behind. Nature offers no warnings, no explanations, just the wind in the branches and the rustling of leaves. Its language too old for us to understand, its silence too deep to question.